Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, 30 AM and FM stations. I'm here for 3 hours each week talking about the great outdoors, the history and tradition of the outdoors here in the great state of Michigan, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and wildlife issues and conservation issues and even some wild game cooking. In fact, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner will be joining me about 2 hours and 45 minutes from now to talk about wild game cooking, and he will have another great recipe for us. Well, it's the month of November. Rocktober's behind us now. It's the month of November. And from now until the first of the year, there's this, you hear that noise in the background? It's kind of a whine, and then it turns into a hum, and then it turns into a roar. It's the sound of this giant vacuum sucking us increasingly fast until the end of the year. I've always felt this way, that once Halloween is behind us, the marketing powers that be start to push us and pull us toward the end of the year. It's like we don't have time to breathe. There's Halloween, and then there's Thanksgiving, and then there's Christmas, and then there's New Year's. So all we can do is say, you know what? We like I'll say this. I like the holidays. I love the holidays. But I don't like the pressure and the marketing hype that we are going to have to deal with now for the next 2 months. So maybe I'll just refuse to be a part of it. I'll enjoy the holidays, but take time, relax, breathe, get outdoors, go hunting, go fishing, and let the marketing people do what they will and hype us and try to sell us stuff. Hey, I make my living trying to sell stuff in part, right? So I get that. But get outdoors, relax, breathe, get away from it, and just have fun. Well, the weather's been kind of interesting, hasn't it? Kind of a roller coaster here. We had that cold snap, that really cold snap a couple of weeks ago when we said, hey, it's too early to be that cold. And it was. Well, now I'm saying, hey, it's too late to be this warm. It seems like we're on a temperature roller coaster. Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa, he didn't allude to this. He said this is going to be the case. We're going to be on a weather roller coaster, highs and lows, highs and lows. And right now we've got some abnormally warm weather. Will that affect the whitetail rut? That's always the question, isn't it? The rut. When's the rut going to start? How will the weather affect the rut? How will the moon phase affect the rut? And listen, I do not pretend to be a deer hunting expert at all. I don't want to be a deer hunting expert, but I am an observer, right? I'm a lifelong participant. I'm not as hardcore about deer hunting as I am bear hunting or turkey hunting or walleye fishing. But I am a participant and an observer. The whitetail rut is going to happen basically from October, the first 10 days or so of November. It's going to happen. And why is that significant? Well, it's significant because, number one, primarily, first and foremost, biologically, it's the time of year that our whitetail herd is in kind of a crazy time, right? The bucks get all this extra hormone in them, and they get distracted, and their necks swell up, and they're chasing does, and they may come out in the daylight more than they would have the other 50 weeks of the year. So it's great news for hunters. Basically, regardless of the weather, the whitetail rut is going to happen. It's happening now. You're seeing rubs, you're seeing scrapes, and what's the difference? I hear this all the time. Hey, people say, hey, I saw a big scrape on a tree the other day. Well, you didn't see a scrape on a tree, you saw a rub. Scrapes are on the ground, rubs are on the trees. And what's the purpose of them? They're signposts, they're communication spots. They are a way that whitetails communicate with other whitetails. Hey, I'm in the area, here I am, come and find me. Or in a buck's case, hey, I'm here, I'm going to come and find you. It's a great time of year, isn't it? It's a very exciting time of year. It's a time of year when you will see more whitetail activity than you probably have the rest of the year. And good news for hunters. My granddaughter, Addison, shot a very nice buck the other day. 2.5-year-old, 7-point, big-bodied deer, some good mass on the rack. She told me, as soon as she knew that buck was out there, because we had it on a trail camera, she said, Grandpa, I'm going to shoot that buck. I'm going to shoot that 7-point. And she did. Now, being a grandpa who has what I think is a great relationship with my only granddaughter, Addison, my favorite granddaughter, I've been giving her grief. I, of course, congratulated her on that buck, but now I'm giving her grief. I said, Addison, you shot my buck. I was going to shoot that 7-point. No, Grandpa, that was my buck. I said I was going to shoot that buck. No, Addison. Addison, I'm an old man. I don't have a lot of more years of hunting ahead of me. And you have your entire life. Addison, you shot your grandpa's buck. You should have saved that buck for me. Now, knowing full well I was never going to shoot that buck. And I'm much more excited for her to shoot that buck. But I'm having some fun teasing her that she shot her grandpa's buck. Congrats, kiddo. We knew that buck was in the area because we had it on a trail camera. This whole concept of using trail cameras and cameras in the outdoor and cellular trail cameras has changed the way that we as hunters hunt these days. You can't deny it. Especially these cell cameras that are out there scouting 24 hours a day, and then they send a picture to your phone real time. Ding! You can't wait to look at your phone. There's a deer. Is it a buck? Is it a good buck? Where is he? Which stand is it on? Which food plaza is it on? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all, but it has changed the way we deer hunt these days. It used to be about the only way to scout a piece of property was to be out there and walk it and sit on it and watch it and observe it. These days, we go out there, we put up a series of cellular trail cameras, and then we back out of the property. We don't disturb it, we stay away from it, and we watch what's happening, when it's happening, and where it's happening, and then we determine when and where we're going to sit the next time we hunt. Again, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's interesting. It's interesting to the point where some states have actually banned the use of cameras because they say it's unfair. I'm not saying it's unfair. I'm just saying it's a tool that technology has given us these days that if we don't take advantage of it, we're probably missing the boat because our neighbors are all taking advantage of it for sure. But we knew that buck was out there. We also know that there are at least 2 other bucks that are out there that are bigger than that one. I also know from talking with my neighbors around our hunting property that we're leasing. We don't own it. Thank you, Gene and Pam, for leasing it to us. We appreciate it very much. We appreciate access to that land. But our neighbors are also running cameras. So between us, there's a network of people that we're watching where these deer are moving. We're watching which deer are out there. And it's different than the old days. And it's kind of fun. And it's kind of cool for a tech geek junkie like me. But at what point does it go too far? I don't know. And what about baiting? This is the question that came up on my Behind the Mic segment here in the studio a couple of minutes ago as we were getting ready to record the show. If the DNR is admitting that they have overreacted to the threat of CWD, chronic wasting disease, in our whitetail herd, why is baiting still banned in the Lower Peninsula? Baiting was banned in large part because the biologists were concerned about the threat of CWD, chronic wasting disease, so they banned baiting. Yet, depending on where you go in this state, many, if not most, of the hunters in a given area are still using bait, yet the DNR admits that they overreached, they overreacted on CWD. That's a question that's beyond the scope of this radio show and beyond the scope of my small brain, I'll tell you that. But it's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting question, and one that will continue to be debated and talked about in Michigan deer hunting circles. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show after the break, Sergeant Mark DePew talks about getting ready for the hunting season, what he's seeing out there, some things to keep us in mind, to keep us legal and safe this hunting season. Then in our second hour, Tom Nelson of the American Archer talks about bow hunting the whitetail rut here in Michigan. Nick Green of MUCC checks in. Sergeant Jason Wicklund answers the question about the use of cameras in the outdoors, hunting here in Michigan. And in our third hour, we're talking trapping with Berne Burzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. And of course, we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. Just a few of our more than 30 affiliate Outdoor Magazine radio stations across the great state of Michigan. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives, rapidriverknifeworks.us. As always, I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket, as I always do. And it's interesting how many times a day I reach for that Rapid River knife to pull it out just to do day-to-day activities, from opening packages to sharpening something and sometimes, I'll be honest, I use the knife in a way it wasn't designed to, and I'm talking maybe as a screwdriver, and I shouldn't. But I know the knife is tough, and it can handle it. RapidRiverKnifeWorks.us. Check out their website. They make folding knives like I have in my pocket. We used to call them jackknife. Skinning knives, fillet knives, axes, hatchets, even kitchen knives. Check out the website, RapidRiverKnifeWorks.us, or better yet, stop by their showroom just off US 2, east of Rapid River in the UP, and see what I'm talking about. You can watch them make knives. You can check out this beautiful showroom. It's really quite a place. Tell them the big guy sent you, too. Tell them Avery said to stop by. RapidRiverKnifeWorks.us. Well, it is November. Busy time of year in the outdoors, right? The rut is going on across the state for whitetail hunters. Waterfowl season is on. Some great fall fishing right now. Trophy fishing across the state. And it's like, okay, as folks who love the outdoors, what are we going to do? We have all these different choices right now, and isn't it a wonderful choice? So while we're out there enjoying the outdoors this time of year, there are a group of people who are working like crazy right now, and I'm thinking of our state's conservation officers, and I call them game wardens or warden, and to me, it's a sign of respect. And I will tell you this. My dad was a cop for 35 years, so I come from that perspective. I am pro-law enforcement. For many, many years back when the Michigan DNR had the VCO program, the Volunteer Conservation Officer program, I was a VCO. So I come from that perspective. So I have much respect. Sergeant Mark DePew is a guy who has been a conservation officer in our state for many years now, and he joins us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Sarge, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing real well. Listen, remind me, when we have guests on the show, I like to get a feel for the background. How did you end up as a conservation officer? How did this path, life's path, lead you to the spot you're in today?
Well, I had always wanted to be a police officer for Halloween. Speaking of the devil, just here a couple days ago, I was always dressed up as a police officer. I remember my mom putting tape down the side of my legs in elementary school for, the stripe down an officer's leg. Then I was in hunter safety. Back then you had to be 14 to deer hunt, but I somehow got in at 12 at the hunter safety program. And Bob Smith, who's passed on now, Bob was a conservation officer in MUCC County. And Bob probably stood 6'4", 6'5", great big guy. And I remember him walking into our hunter safety class, and I was just awestruck. That gray uniform, green pants, the gun belt, the gun, he had his hat on, and I thought the Archangel Gabriel walked in himself. and I was sold from that point. So I fast forward, I went to Fair State University, got my degree, then went on for my master's. I then worked for a sheriff's department, Bard Sheriff's Department for 10 years, was a canine handler. But I always had this internal burn to be a conservation officer, game warden. And in 2008, I was selected, and the rest is history. I worked in Otsego County, Gaylord, for the last 15 years. I'm now promoted to sergeant, and I've got a great group of guys, awesome group of guys. And it is the greatest, I know I'm skewed, but it's the greatest job in law enforcement. We work from our home, we set our own schedules, and we get to work in the outdoors. And as you know, from duck hunting to deer hunting, when the smell of the fall, all of those things just all come together, and it is just a phenomenal time of year to be a hunter and a game warden. So, I appreciate the opportunity for me to talk with you today, and what you guys do, too, to promote what we love near and dear to us here in Michigan. So,
I didn't know you were a Ferris grad. Go Bulldogs. I am as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So,
and the last time I talked to you, Mike, we were in Vanderbilt at the elk orientation.
Yes.
Pre-COVID. So
yeah. Back when you had them in person, right?
Yeah.
Listen, I find that you work in one of the most interesting parts of our state, because not only do you have whitetail, you've got elk in your backyard. What's it like to work in elk country?
Again, going back, I remember my first day on the job. Kelly Ross, who's a retired conservation officer now, he and I had my first day. We had went, believe it or not, was the opening day of elk season in the early hunt. And those animals had just started, the pre-rut, and we had went out and Kelly had called in a bull elk to about 30 yards, and we were downwind of him. And he had, bugled, and I can remember that bugle like hitting my chest and going through me, and I just had this chill, and I knew I was in the right place. But they are amazing. To think that big of a critter is out there, and this far east in the United States, we have elk. A lot of people pay a lot of money to go out and just to hear an elk out west. They're a special critter. They're great to work. They're fun to work. The hunt is fast, engaging, and they're the king of the north, so to speak. So it's a lot of fun.
So how do you guys and gals, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense at all, how do conservation officers, I mean, you got to know about fishing, you've got to know about waterfowl hunting, you got to know about whitetails in your area, you got to know about elk. I mean, how do you have this depth of knowledge? Because it can't come from just growing up in the outdoors, because no one person can have that amount of experience and knowledge with different species and critters.
Right. And in addition to that, conservation officers are police officers too. So we have to know the general law, from a speeding ticket, stop sign violation, all the way to a poached elk. and it's a constant barrage of new information that comes in. And as I get older, I tell my younger officers, it's really hard to unlearn something. I mean, you could probably relate where you learned it the first time, but then they changed it, and you got to keep going back and make sure that, unlearn it. And but the knowledge that the officers have, you have to, first of all, you don't want to speak outside of your turn. You want to make sure you're giving the public the right information. You also got to know where to look, have those resources that are there. And like, for example, the hunting guides, I tell when we do the elk orientation that those hunting guides are basically your Bible. Conservation officer is going to hold you to that, to the information in that guide. And before I'll go out, let's say waterfowl, check waterfowls, I will read the waterfowl guide, and look at the laws and make sure that, I'm up on those too. So we can't know everything, you're right, but knowing where to look and knowing a resource to call. I joke our front desk guy, Andy, here in Gaylord, a lot of folks know Andy. Andy is a great, awesome resource if you have a question or a concern. I'll oftentimes call our district office and talk to Andy and say, hey, Andy, am I on the right page with this? And Andy's not a police officer or conservation officer. So Andy's really, really knowledgeable. So knowing where to look and how to look, it helps us with that. We also have continued training through the department a couple times a year where we're, our legal department will come in and tell us on different things and changes. And that happens in every law enforcement agency. So, but yeah, you have to be a jack of all trades, master of none. I will tell you that being growing up in the outdoors, growing up in a hunting family, hunting and fishing family, that was a huge step forward. Knowing about what the animals are doing and what I need to be doing as a conservation officer, and talking to some of the old game wardens, the violations will be where the animals are at. So if you don't have animals in a location or go somewhere else, because if you find the animals, you'll find the violations of the folks that are trying to circumvent the law. So,
Sarge, you bring up an interesting point, though, that even you as a veteran conservation officer, sometimes you have to check and double check what the laws and regulations are and have they changed. And you've heard this joke. People will say, hey, listen, game laws are so complicated now I have to have a lawyer go with me to go hunting and fishing. And that is a joke, but there is some truth in it.
I agree, yeah.
It can put hunters and anglers sometimes in a tough spot. Look, I know there are people who go out intentionally to violate, but there are also people who go out and they break a game law, a fish or game law unintentionally. Do you guys look at that in two different categories?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just coming from experience, I can tell you that when someone is genuinely didn't know, you can see it a mile away. And in those folks, it's more education than anything. And I tell my officers that too. But on the flip side of that, you can also see someone who's trying to break that law or get around something. You can see them a mile away too. So the discretion is always at the officer's, base. I've never had an officer tell me, should I write this guy a ticket or not? That's up to the officer. But then the vast majority of the cases, you can see those genuine, they didn't understand something. And you're right. When I first got here, I remember some of the trout regulations. I would look at that and I would have to read it 3 or 4 times to try to figure out what was going on. But since then, we have, smartened them up and made them much more user-friendly. And, as law enforcement officers, we're always trying to make it easier to understand than not, because we understand that too with, what the laws do change. And it's not like general criminal law enforcement where, a domestic violence is domestic violence is domestic violence. Well, a deer violation isn't always a deer violation, from year to year. So knowing that, but the standout, the ones that have been there a long time, like a deer, has to have a tag on it, or the tag has to be punched. Those types of things, those have been here a while. So we're pretty firm on those. But you're right, some of the other stuff can be confusing.
Sarge, hang tight. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. We're talking with Sergeant Mark DePew, Michigan Conservation Officer, about what that job is all about, helping us get ready for the upcoming season. Look, I always say if you spend enough time in the outdoors, you're going to, at some point, unintentionally break a fish or game law. It's like driving. You can't drive from here to work without, maybe going a little too fast or not coming to a complete stop. There's that, and then there's the people who go out to intentionally poach game, and you and I are not those types of people. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Tawas on WIOS 1480 AM 106.9 FM. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Michigan-based Boning Archery. Boning has been a leader in the archery industry since, 76 years now. Since 1946, in fact. Roland Boning invented Ferrule-Tite to glue broadheads to, at the time, were wooden arrow shafts. These days, Boning continues to innovate, come up with new products, new manufacturing process. It's a state-of-the-art facility right there in Lake City, Michigan. Check out the website, boning.com. That's BOHNING.com, boning.com. I would bet, as you are in the woods this fall, somewhere on your archery setup there are Boning products. And if not, maybe you should check them out, boning.com. Talking right now with Sergeant Mark DePew. By the way, the website for the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Sergeant Mark DePew working out of the Gaylord area. Sarge, before the break, you said something about some of the common mistakes you see hunters make, and tagging was right off the top of that list.
Yeah, and we'll even see this in sometimes the elk hunt, which, again, is it's a really priority area. Folks, and I've been there, believe me, I've been there. You get a big buck, or any buck really is a trophy, in my opinion. You get that deer, you get the tag on it, but you forgot to punch the tag. That would technically be a violation. But the onus here is we want to make sure that the animal is tagged right. So you get you get the pictures going and all that. Here comes the game warden walking up, and all of a sudden it's not, the tag isn't punched. Now you can tell instantly that this person is just elated. He's excited. He or she's excited. People are taking pictures, and you take a look at the tag. Well, it's not punched. 9 times out of 10, I'll pull the hunter over and just say, "Hey, can you punch the tag real quick for me?" And then they'll do that. But there are those, and I'll get probably 3-4 a year, during season, where they put the tag on it, and they get it back to the house, process it, they take the tag off, and they tuck it back in their wallet. Unfortunately, some of these folks haven't been rocket scientists, so they leave blood on the tag, and then they hand me, and then they're out hunting the next time. Oh, I haven't got a deer yet. And they'll hand me a tag with blood on it because they're reusing the tag. And that happens more often. That happens quite a bit, actually. So we want to make sure that those tags are used appropriately and they're being lawfully put on the animal. And, again, that second part where that's educational. We want to, those folks to learn to punch that tag. That's just one example. Another one is, we understand as officers and as a department that people are going to make mistakes, and it is a mistake up and until you try covering it up. For example, during the elk hunt, we'll have folks, and Mike, you're aware of this, we'll have folks that have antlerless tags to shoot a cow, and they'll, the spike bulls will be in their notoriously will hang out with cows, and we'll get an antlerless hunter wind up shooting a spike bull. And, they report themselves. We strongly encourage them to report themselves. Now, they don't get the full suspension and lost hunting privileges at all. But, we do address it with a minor infraction. But again, like I said, when it becomes criminal, when you try to cover something up.
Sure.
And believe me, we're humans just like everybody else. People do make mistakes. And the person who comes and says, "Hey, this is what I did," I'm much more apt to give a break than with someone who's, trying to cover it up.
You talk about education.
In life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You talk about education. You folks find yourselves in an interesting situation this fall with this mandatory online reporting system, don't you?
Right. Yeah, we do, yeah. I've heard the conspiracy theories take off. And I mean, in all honesty, I'm a hunter. I'm not going to give you my political affiliation, but I understand big government. I get all that. I see what some of the people are saying, but in no way have I seen. We have 12, 20 officers in 13 counties that I have seen any one of those officers utilize that list where, in a spying scenario. That's not what it's for. It's the department's ability to try to capture better information on deer harvest reporting. I shot a buck this year. I shot a 3-point. First time I've shot a deer with a bow or with a crossbow. And I went in there and did it right from the scene, obviously, and it was pretty user friendly. I was actually it was easy to do. But again, I understand those concerns. And as a department this year, and we are in the educational thing, unless it's extraordinarily, a violation where, I can't even think of one, but right now it's just an educational thing. This is what the law requires. This is what we need to do. And for the most part, vast majority, I haven't heard anybody having any major issues as far as the officers goes or the department with any one particular person. So, it's change. I get it. Nobody likes change. I specifically don't like change. But, and I look at the outside of Michigan, too. I think Wisconsin, Ohio, the western states, it's the norm. I get it, though.
Hang tight, Sarge. Got to take another break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. We're talking with Sergeant Mark DePew, Michigan conservation officer working out of the Gaylord area. It's an interesting job. They are tasked with enforcing rules that they didn't come up with. The biologist and the NRC and the legislature or the wildlife managers come up with the job or with the rules, and then they're made law, and then the conservation officers have to enforce them. And they always get questions. Listen, we'll address this more after the break with Sergeant Mark DePew right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website. It's MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. If you sign up to become an MUCC member for the first time, do it online. Use the promo code MIKE, all caps, M-I-K-E, and save 25%. That's MUCC.org. Talking now with Sergeant Mark DePew of Michigan DNR, working out of the Gaylord District. Sarge, before the break, I said that... And I've seen this myself. When you folks are in the field, you become the DNR to the average hunter or angler. They think you are the guys and gals who come up with the laws. I mean, they ask you questions about biology. They ask you questions about why is baiting illegal. You don't have the answer to these questions.
Right. Or if there's not, the fish aren't biting, it's the conservation officer's fault. I get it. We're the face of the DNR. We wear a uniform every day. The biologists, some of the other folks, they don't per se have a uniform. But we are the tip of the spear, so to speak. So we get a lot of that. But on the contrary, we've been instructed, that, that's the position. That's our job. And even in general law enforcement, it was the same thing. The law comes down to the folks who enforce it. And, if you just have that passion that when we all got into it and keep stoking that passion, you continue to just blow through some of those things and understand that those people are frustrated on whatever they're talking about, and letting them talk, just letting them vent, is always a big thing. Let them get it off their chest, and that's what we're there for. We're there to hear those types of things. Sometimes we don't like it, but you just sit there and let them vent, and that's their right to vent to us. So we get that.
Yeah.
And, as far as sportsmen go, I can't tell you. I would say 99% of the contacts that I have with people are genuine, good contacts. They're happy to see us out there. Growing up, I think I had, other than my contact with Officer Smith, Conservation Officer Smith, I never really was checked by a conservation officer in the field. So it's a unique thing that's going to happen or could happen to you in the woods. And we know that without those folks out in the woods and hunting and fishing, people out fishing, that we wouldn't be there. So we have a deep respect for people that utilize our outdoors.
I've always found it interesting, the mystique, the persona, the reputation that game wardens have. I mean, I don't know how you guys learn this, but you can see in the dark, you never sleep, you're everywhere at the same time, and you know everything that's going on. At least that's the perception that some people have out there.
I think don't forget the black helicopters and the satellites.
Oh my gosh! Yes. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. I got some stories I could tell you off air, and I'm sure you have stories you could tell me as well. But it's one of those jobs that it's almost larger than life in some ways.
Yeah, you hear some of the stories, and officers are feeling like they're 10 foot tall, and it does blow your mind. That aura, but you're right. I think it's derived out of, at the basis, it's derived out of respect for the position, for what we do. If you think about it, I keep referring back to general law enforcement. One of our officers will go into a camp where everyone is armed, everyone has a loaded gun. You'll walk up to a group of hunters, 5, 6 guys. Everybody's got a long gun, a deer rifle. That you think of the danger element that officer is walking into. And again, coming from general law enforcement, if I saw 10 guys with rifles, I would be drawing down on them behind some kind of cover to protect myself. But as game wardens, we know that our folks are going to be armed. We know that everybody's going to be armed. We walk out there, and I tell my new officers, all you have in those situations are the ability to communicate with people. And you can't come off as a jerk. You got to come off as compassionate. But at the same time, you got to be, do your job. And 99% of the time, people understand that. But it's the 1% that we hear in the news or something that goes bad that can happen. And when those officers, something like that does happen, it paints everybody with the same brush. And unfortunately, that's the time that we're living with in law enforcement right now. But I see, new beginnings and changes that are made. And out of anything bad comes something good. So I think we're now headed in the right direction.
Well, Sergeant Mark DePew, I appreciate your time this week. You've been very generous with that. Keep up the good work. Have a great season. Be safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you out there.
Very good, sir. Thank you for your time.
All right. My pleasure. It always makes me nervous, Charlie, when people call me sir. It's like, they didn't start calling me sir until I got old. Sergeant Mark DePew of the Michigan DNR, the website michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We will have another conservation officer in this week's show. In fact, Lieutenant Jason Wicklund is going to join me at the end of the second hour to answer this week's Ask Avery question. That's dealing with the use of cameras while hunting. But before that, after the top of the hour, Tom Nelson of the American Archer will join us to talk about bow hunting the rut, and Nick Green of MUCC checks in before that. In our third hour, we're talking trapping with Bernie Burzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. That's right here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan brand meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, on more than 30 radio stations. Yes, this is first and foremost a radio show. It is produced, scheduled, syndicated, recorded, uploaded as a radio show. And I do think the best way to listen, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station. There, you get your local news and weather and sports, even your local ads. Maybe there's a sale or something you want to take advantage of. But isn't it nice to know that if you can't listen to the radio version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show, maybe your local affiliate doesn't, your local radio station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or maybe you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal of the show. Isn't it nice to know that there is a podcast version of Outdoor Magazine Radio available? You can hear that on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on my Facebook page, all of the different podcast outlets, from Amazon Music to Apple Music to Google Play, Deezer, Odyssey. It's even on YouTube. Anywhere that you can hear a podcast, you can probably hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. As long as I'm doing some blatant self-promotion and talking about podcasting, I also do monthly podcasts for Angler Quest boats, Primal Tree Stands, Polar Craft boats, and offshore tackle. In fact, when we're done here in the studio recording this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle will join me to record this month's Offshore Tackle podcast. Regardless, though, of how you are hearing my voice, where you're hearing my voice, when you are hearing my voice, I do certainly appreciate it. What I'm doing, from my perspective, is a blessing from God, and I would not be able to do it without you hearing the content of the show and the podcast each and every month, and every week. So I do certainly appreciate it. You know, here in Michigan, I've talked about this so many times. I'm a Michigan guy. I'm a Michigan fanboy. I do not apologize for that. I grew up in this state. I have hunted and fished in this state my entire life. I have made my career here in Michigan. And we're so lucky to have so many great natural resources. But we're also lucky that we have so many people who are icons in the hunting and fishing worlds. We've got people here in Michigan who are known nationally for their expertise, for their ability to communicate, for their on-camera presence. And I'm thinking right now of Tom Nelson. Tom, the host of the American Archer, he's been on television since I think the mid-'90s. He started on the Outdoor Channel as host of the American Archer. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Tom, welcome back. How are you? Always a pleasure.
Yes, it is. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show again, Mike. I always look forward to chatting with you and your guests.
How did you get to the point of where you are today?
Pure luck, I guess, more than anything. It surely wasn't my good looks. But, you've heard the old adage, being in the right place at the right time. And I just was. I mean, for many years, I was a sales manager at Anderson Archery in Grand Ledge, Michigan, which was, when you use the term icons in the industry, that was an icon in the archery world as far as our archery pro shop. And back in, I believe it was 96, I was approached about hosting a television show on the Outdoor Channel, which was in its infancy at that point. And at first I said no. It was, something I really didn't have any interest in, having a camera guy following me around. Bow hunting, such a personal type sport, and at that time, my wife Beth and I were in the process of trying to buy this farm, and we were trying to figure out financially how we could make it work. And I thought, if I juggled a couple jobs, I could probably make the mortgage payments, and I did. So I ended up going ahead, hosting a TV show, and after 2 years, I guess it was, I decided I'm going to do it full time, and now 26 years later, here we are, still going strong. So I've been very blessed, Mike. That's the truth of it.
Congrats on that. And you mentioned having a camera person with you. What is that like? How does it change the bow hunting experience?
Well, boy, we could do a whole 3-hour program on how camera guys, videographers, and close encounters and mishaps, etc. But usually, again, when you're out bow hunting, and Mike, you're a long time bow hunter. When you're out there by yourself, reflecting on life in general, it's just such a peaceful, relaxing time to spend in the woods, and it's precious. And to have somebody with you is a bit awkward. Now, it'd be different if it's your grandson or one of your kids, your wife. That's different. But when you have somebody that's not immediate family and they're sitting over your shoulder and they're going to capture every time you scratch your head or sneeze or do something, miss a deer. It took me a little bit. No, it took me a long time to get used to it. But now, honestly, I don't even think about it. I go out there and hunt as if he's not even there. I should say he or she is not even there videoing me. So it's something I guess I became accustomed to, but it took a while.
And are you strictly a bow hunter? Do you gun hunt at all, Tom?
I don't. During Michigan's gun season, my dad's 90 now and he's unable to gun hunt anymore, but I would stay home for the opener, spend a couple of days with him. And as he got older, I would sit with him so he could continue to hunt. But I as a youngster, he took me out every year. I gun hunted until probably I was 20, but I got so wrapped up in the bow hunting at that time, I just morphed into a archery only guy. And nowadays, like this year will be, nothing different. I'll head in November during our rifle season. I'll head to Kansas and then North Dakota. So I'll continue the bow hunt right on through it. But no, to answer your question, I'm giving you way more info than needed. But no, I'm pretty much strictly a bow hunter. Albeit, Mike, let me just say this: I still like the small game hunt. Like I'll still go rabbit hunting with the beagles and my shotgun, and I still love, when given the opportunity, to hunt waterfowl. Oh. So I do like to do that. If I wasn't a bow hunter, I'd be a waterfowler. I assure you.
You probably don't get a chance to chase birds much with your schedule the way it is.
Very seldom. Sometimes a little bit during that late goose season and such, but once in a while, if one of my buddies invites me, say, hey, we're going to here, there, or the birds are in, I'll make room and go, but not as often as I'd like. But I do. I like the part that you can talk while you're waiting. You could, you're calling, acting with the birds, calling. It's just the camaraderie. I mean, it's just completely different than bow hunting to me. So it's fun to do.
So what is the appeal of bow hunting? Is it the up close and personal interaction with the critters?
Without question. I mean, there's nothing. It's hard to describe, especially to somebody that doesn't bow hunt. But it's one thing to have a deer at 100 yards, and he doesn't even know you're in the same zip code, and you take your 270 and dump it, and that's that's part of gun hunting. But when you're out with a bow, I, for example, restrict myself. I mean, I don't like to take a shot at a whitetail over 30 yards, like a 30-yard and under. Prefer a 20. I mean, in fact, I prefer a 10-yard shot. But I like being up close, trying to outfox them. I love hunting whitetails. I'd rather hunt whitetails than any other big game animal, and I'd rather hunt them here in Michigan than big buck states like Iowa and Kansas. I get more satisfaction out of shooting a buck on our farm than anywhere else. But it's just the solitude, the weather. I mean, when you can be out there, you know how this fall has been. This has been remarkable. Weather, not much rain, lots of sunny days, high pressure. It's just been a great time to be in Michigan's woods, and that's why I like it. I do more reflecting on life, sitting in a tree stand, and make more important decisions sitting up there than anywhere else. And again, Mike, when I'm in Michigan, I don't take a cameraman. I go out. That's my time. I sit alone. Once in a while, be nice and let a videographer come along with me. But normally this is my time on our farm, and that's my wife and I, our kids. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's man. It's just a great time of year. It's to live here in Michigan. Yeah, we don't have mountains or whatever, but man, we've got so much here, Tom. It's such a beautiful state. We've got 4 seasons, so much to do here. It's a great place to live and a great place to make a career, isn't it?
Oh, it surely is. And as I said, Michigan is, it's in my blood. I could live anywhere with what I do, but Michigan, as you said, with the 4 seasons, the beautiful falls, good hunting for just about everything, whether you're a small game hunter or a big game hunter. And I'll come home, Mike. I might be in, for example, Kansas for a week. I'll get home 10 o'clock at night. The next morning, I'll be up with put my camos on and hoof it back into our woods,
Hang tight, Tom.
And I do.
Hang tight. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Tom Nelson of The American Archer, the website, theamericanarcher.com, theamericanarcher.com. Check him out. He's an interesting guy, a very knowledgeable guy, and I will talk more with him after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Carroll on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. For more info, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. I can tell you right now, not firsthand, unfortunately, but reports from my buddies who have been walleye fishing out of Linwood Beach on Saginaw Bay say there's a real good big fish bite going on right now. Still some perch action if you can find them, but most of the efforts right now are being directed at those big fall Saginaw Bay walleye. As we continue on through this season and move towards the ice fishing, Linwood Beach is a great jumping off destination there as well. Great people at Linwood Beach, a great location, great facilities. What more could you ask for? The website, linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. While you are online, I would ask you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and be sure to head over to theamericanarcher.com. Theamericanarcher.com is the website of Tom Nelson, host of the American Archer TV show on the Outdoor Channel for more than a quarter of a century now. He was one of the early shows on the Outdoor Channel. He's a Michigan guy, a proud Michigan guy, and a Michigan bow hunter as well. Tom, before the break, a couple of things you said that really got my attention. You love to bow hunt here in Michigan on your farm, primarily without a camera guy over your shoulder. Is your do you judge Michigan whitetails differently than you do out of state? Do you hold our Michigan whitetails to the same accountability and the same shooter status as you would in a traditional big buck state?
Great question, Mike. No. If I'm in Kansas or Iowa, I usually try to hold out for a larger size buck, something that. Depending on what's in the area, what's on trail cameras and stuff, and upper tier deer. But here in Michigan, and let me just say this before I go any farther. I've hunted in over 25 different states for whitetails in Canadian provinces, and the sharpest whitetails that I've ever matched wits with, without question, hands down, are Michigan deer, closely followed by Pennsylvania. But if you can kill a doe in Michigan, you can kill a 150 class buck in Iowa or Kansas. Our deer are that sharp compared to. And I spend a lot of time out of state hunting deer, and I can definitely testify that our deer are very hunter savvy and are one tough customer. So yes, when I'm in Michigan, when I'm hunting like on our farm, I'm not I'm not holding out, Mike, all year for, I got to shoot a Boone and Crockett or a Pope and Young buck. But, if I see a nice buck, my wife uses the term rocks or socks. She always say, people say, Beth, where do you live? Or, I'll know it when I see it. If it rocks my socks, I'll shoot it. But, any deer here in Michigan, doe, buck, especially with a bow, is a trophy because our deer are that sharp compared to other deer. But again, I look at what, I use a lot of trail cameras, and I keep tabs on our deer here pretty good. And usually there's a couple that, I like, and I enjoy. I don't want to end my season, so I enjoy matching wits and saying, I'd like to target this deer or that deer, but heck, this time of year, you never know what's going to show up, so you better be prepared. But I'm giving you a lengthy answer again, but that's kind of the criteria I use when I'm hunting here at home.
Well, and let's talk about bow hunting whitetails right now in Michigan during this time known as the rut. How is this? How do you approach this season with a bow in your hand, Tom?
Okay, this is a little different. When I'm hunting, let's say early first couple weeks of October and such, hunting food sources, we put some food plots in and such, but there's, agricultural fields all around us. So basically hunting travel routes to and from the feeding areas. But now, by gosh, things change. And I set up tree stands and ground blinds. I use ground blinds a lot as I'm getting older, but I'll have stands in places that I just don't even go into. I don't hunt until this time of year. I hold a little surprise party for those deer when all of a sudden there are areas with high concentration of does, and the bucks will, be where the does are, of course, starting right now. So I'll hunt those spots. But I hunt the does where the does are. That's where I'll be in this period. The bucks, and I've been seeing them here lately. They're in that seeking period where they're ready. They're looking. They're nudging does, and some of the younger bucks actually, chase them across the field, and they're getting ready. So anything can happen anytime. I mean, stands that haven't been real active become active, but now I hunt the does. Areas where I've got a lot of does, where they're feeding a lot, certain little killer food plots I put in that the does are at. I'd leave them alone till now, and I'll be jumping in those. And I watch for scrapes. I do a lot of mock scrapes too. I'm a big fan of making mock scrapes, and shot one of my better Michigan bucks last year over a scrape I made, and he came in on the 4th of November, and I shot him.
All day sits this time of year if you can, Tom?
Depending, Mike. When things are really active, I'll do it. And when I say all day, I usually will get down at noon and either come back or go sit in the truck or climb down, walk 100 yards and eat something just to stretch out and things. To sit all day for me anymore, I get pretty stoved up and up there, and I gotta get out and walk around. So, and then maybe for a good hour, and then I'll climb back in or get into the blind. But if you can do it, you hear a lot of people say, I think it's a waste of time. But I've shot bucks at 1:00 in the afternoon in November. So anything happens. Those bucks are traveling. I saw a buck yesterday driving back from town. It was 11:30, and he was on the cruise, went right across in front of me on a relatively busy road. So they're out and about.
You also mentioned ground blinds. I'm a huge fan of ground blinds, especially as I get older as well. What's the key? What's the trick? And how do you set these things up? So, turkeys don't mind. Turkeys, ground blinds don't bother them at all. Bears could care less about a ground blind. But if you pop a ground blind up at a spot on the edge of a food plot, first time a big matriarchal doe sees that thing, she's going to turn herself inside out. So how do you hunt out of a ground blind and not get made in these things?
And that's, again, a real problem. Guys will go out, gals, and hunters will put their blind up and hunt out of it that next day. And our deer here especially, they don't put up with it. Like you said, you get one of those old mature does, and she'll peg that blind immediately. It starts stomping or blowing. They just won't put up with it. So if you can, and a lot, depending, if you're on private land and you can pop that blind up in August, brush it in, put some natural browse around it. Like I'll cut limbs and put some in there, around it just to kind of blend in. That helps even more, but it's just having it up as long as you can. I have a couple now that are pretty proven, and I've actually put some permanent ground blinds on a couple of these food plots. And I've got, again, my wife and granddaughters, just people hunting now where I want them. I feel a lot safer knowing they're out in ground level. And
Sure.
like you, Mike, I'm with you 100%. I like a ground blind. You can move around. It's a little warmer and such. But, again, you really got to pay attention, put them out plenty early because deer won't put up with it. And if you're hunting state land and you got to throw that blind up, do it early, brush it in as best as you can, but it's really, really hard to fool those mature deer. It truly is.
You also said in our earlier segment you like to limit your shots to no more than 30 yards, less if you can. So, I hear bow hunters talk about this all the time. Well, I'm good out to 50 yards. Well, I may be good out to 50 yards on a target, but I don't want to shoot a whitetail. So I guess my question is, if you're going to hunt at 30 or less, what do you practice your shooting at?
Mike, I'll shoot. I'll practice at 50 yards. I do it all the time. I did yesterday even. And in my opinion, if you practice at 50, practice at 40, it makes those 20-yard shots almost elementary. I mean, it just seems like it's easier. It's great to practice at those farther distances, concentration, and any mistake. If you flinch, you drop your bow arm, something like that really reflects and shows up when you're shooting at a farther distance, where you might just see a little arrow flicker, might shoot a couple inches off at 20. Those longer distances. So it makes you pay attention to your shooting form and such. It makes you a better archer. But by the time you touch off that arrow at a deer 50 yards away, he has even, we think about how quick our bows are now and brag about it, but all he has to do is take a half stutter step, and that can be the difference between hitting the vitals and a gut shot deer. It's just so I just respect these deer too much. I'm not an advocate of long distance shooting. I just am not. And I restrict my shots, especially on whitetails. If anything's going to move or flinch or something, it's a whitetail deer here in Michigan when you shoot. So again, that's the biggest reason I restrict my shooting.
Well, and I respect the fact that you say you respect the animals too much to do that, because I have a little bit of an insight into doing a TV show. And when you think about the pressure that's on you to produce and to harvest on camera, the expense that you put into this hunt, the preparation for and the travel, there's a lot riding on this. And if you've got an animal out there at 50 yards, Tom, and it's a big mature buck and he's quartered away from you, man, that especially for a TV show, that's tough.
Yeah, it is. It truly is, Mike. And people, other TV guys, they'll take that shot and such, and bless them if they make a good hit and everything works out and such. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've been doing this so long and been hunting, since I was 14 with a bow, and I just. It's not that important to me. One thing about my show, Mike, is we show our misses. If we go on an unsuccessful hunt, I still make a TV show out of it, because anybody that's been around the block as far as a hunter a couple times, they realize you're not going to get something every time you go. And I had a famous hunter TV show hunter here. I say famous. I don't even like using that word. A well-known TV host tell me at a recent ATA show that he was surprised I show my misses on the TV show. And I said, well, that's a big part of being a bow hunter. We all miss once in a while. And he said, I would never show a miss on the air. He said, we're professionals, and people think of us as professionals. We don't miss. And I chuckled. I didn't say anything more. I said, well, whatever you think. But I walked away going, you surely haven't hunted with a bow as much as you try to make people think.
Tom, I hate to cut you off. I'm going to text you, see who this guy was. Tom Nelson, the American Archer, theamericanarcher.com. You can find him on the Outdoor Channel. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sandusky on WMIC, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM, 1380 AM. And north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, WCHT 600 AM 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Michigan-based VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Company owner Paul Perrone has come up with a great concept. Why spend a whole bunch of money on several different sets of hunting clothes? Why not buy one good quality, warm, rain-resistant set of clothes and then snap on and zip on a different color outer shell for each different application of hunting? You've got blaze orange you can put on for gun season. You've got snow camo you can put on for predator hunting. You've got upland patterns. It's the way to go. And I've been wearing VersaSkins for the last several years now, and I absolutely love it. The website is versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. And by the way, VersaSkins now makes their clothing in sizes for big people too. I think up like the 4X, 5X, something like that. Check them out online at versaskins.com. Just change your skin for the season you're in. I want to turn our attention now to Nick Green, the Chief Information Officer for the Michigan United Conservation Clubs, a group that I am a member of and a group that I support. I think they're doing a great job. Nick, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, as always, Mike.
Well, the pleasure is mine. What have you been up to, Nick? You been doing fun stuff out in the upland bird or the waterfowl marshes, or have you been in Lansing getting work done?
A little bit of both when fall rolls around. Election years are kind of interesting. You know, we have a lot going on, and legislators are back oftentimes in their districts, so it's a little bit slow in Lansing, but we're looking forward to kind of ramping back up as the election gets over and we start rolling back into our Natural Resources Commission meetings and looking towards a new year of policy work.
Thanks for bringing that up, Nick. That's an interesting point, and I often forget about this. There in the climate that you're in Lansing, you have to deal every so many years with potentially a different group of players, and that could change everything, couldn't it?
It does. You know, we really try hard to forecast what we think is going to happen, but as you know, that's impossible sometimes. So we really come up with game plans that kind of address what could happen if the House and Senate flip, what could happen if they stay the same, what could happen if the governor changes. And you know, we never really stray from being we don't stray from being a conservation-minded organization. We just kind of change the issues we work on. So it might be a little bit more water-driven. You know, if one specific party controls the House, it may be a little bit more hook and hunting related. You know, so it just kind of depends on the ebbs and flows of politics. But we are nonpartisan and work with both sides of the aisle to achieve good conservation policy. And the nice thing about our world is, you know, conservation policy is camo. It's not red or blue. You know, it's not even bipartisan. It's nonpartisan. It's something we really can look towards and just work to better for the betterment of all of us. It doesn't have to have political ties to it.
So after these elections here coming up, when you look at a lame duck legislature, is that a time to potentially get some things done? Hey, I got nothing to lose. I might as well try to push this through. Or is it a time where people are afraid to do anything and it's almost a wasted couple of months here?
It can be a little bit of both. You know, MUCC in particular has had great successes in the past getting through some policy that we struggled with, but was good for conservation. But more importantly, we spend a lot of time trying to stomp down bad ideas. So ideas that would, you know, just whether it's strip authority away from something or remove regulations without proper kind of public, you know, talking about it and an opportunity for the public to engage. So there's a lot of things we work on in lame duck, and it all happens very quickly. But more often than not, we're working with legislators working to try to kill bad ideas as folks are transitioning out, and you know, they don't really have anything to lose, as you said. So that's generally the rule.
And you do all this with just a handful of people. I think, you know, before I started working with you guys, I thought of MUCC, you know, Michigan United Conservation Clubs. They've got a staff of 100 people there in Lansing, but nothing could be further from the truth.
We have 10 full-time staff. We do, on the ground habitat work, which is, out in the field. We are running a youth camp. We publish Michigan Outdoors and Tracks magazine. So we do lots of different things. Our lobbying policy team is 3. It's myself, our executive director, and a policy assistant. So we have our fingers in lots of things in conservation, but yes, 10 full-time staff.
Well, you do a great job, Nick, and I appreciate your time. I'll let you get back to it, and we'll check in again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Nick Green of MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Clubs. He is their CIO, their Chief Information Officer. If you want to learn more about MUCC or their on-the-ground program or any of the other projects or programs that Nick talks about, head to the website mucc.org. That's mucc.org. If you want to become an MUCC member to sign up for the first time, use the promo code Mike, all caps, M-I-K-E, which is me, Mike Avery, and you can save 25% on an already very reasonable price to belong to MUCC. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment, it's a question about the use of cameras while hunting. Now, this is an issue that a lot of other states have dealt with and in some cases banned the use of these cameras. What can we do here in Michigan, and is there a concern that this technology is going too far and maybe giving us as hunters an unfair advantage? We'll address that question and more with this week's Ask Avery segment after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, 1450 AM and 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. Now, the way this works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can ask me a question. Just send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. This can be something that you want me to answer directly, or it can be something that you want me to reach out to, say, MUCC or DNR. Maybe I can get in touch with somebody that you can't, or maybe I can help to clarify something. That's exactly what Don Schlegel did this week. He sent me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. He said, Mike, I was wondering if you could find out if there are any restrictions using electronics for deer hunting, such as CCTVs, monitors, and cameras with the ability to pan, tilt, and zoom. He said a solar panel could be used to power that equipment. He says, I think a camera looking behind you would be helpful to reduce movement while in the blind. I think that's a great question, Don. In fact, you could take it to drones. You could take it to the Primal 360 blind spot that I have actually used and look forward to using for turkey season as well. I'm not an expert on these things. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a conservation officer, but I know people who are game wardens, specifically Lieutenant Jason Wicklund of the DNR, who has helped us out on so many of these Ask Avery segments in the past. Lieutenant, welcome back. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me back this morning.
Always a pleasure. So what's the answer here, Jason, on whether you can use these cameras?
Well, the technology is really starting to become the forefront for hunting. And I know before I even get into Michigan, I know some states have basically outlawed the technology and the use of taking game, and even Boone and Crockett won't accept animals taken over technology. So there's a lot of changes coming right now. Michigan's not one of those states that outlaws, like, say, Wi-Fi enabled trail cameras where you can get a photo sent to your phone. And that seems to be more and more common now with people having game cameras out on different trails so they can tell within minutes what's coming in the area coming down that trail. But to get back to the original question, there's two parts on there. Back in the early 2000s, you might recall there was a big push for computer-assisted shooting. where people had computer cameras pointed at deer, and you would sit behind the computer screen and move a gun and shoot a deer that you paid for. Michigan put a law in place that prohibited that, and there's some parts of that may apply because you can't use anything with a computer. You can't use modem servers, monitors, cameras, anything that aids in the taking of a deer or computerized shooting. Now, if you're just watching for a deer and you're not using that camera to control a computer or a gun, then that would probably be different. The other half of that part, and I'm glad that you brought that up because we get a lot of questions on it, is the drones. People want to know if they can take unmanned aircraft such as drones and fly around looking for deer, or scouting for deer, or pursuing wounded deer. All that stuff that seems to be at the forefront of the hunting world right now, and we that is not legal because we have a law that says you shall not take game or fish using an unmanned vehicle. And then if you further look at the definition of take, it means that you shall not chase, follow, harass, or pursue an animal. So in this case, if he wants to put a camera up because he wants to check behind him or whatever, yes, that would be legal. Solar panel idea, it seems like you'd have a lot of money into that. Trail cameras, those Wi-Fi enabled trail cameras are pretty reasonable right now, and the plan for the cameras based on how many photos you take and some other things that they have for the plan. But we do see that more out there. I know bear houndsmen use Wi-Fi cell phone cameras a lot more now than they did back in the day where they had a dog on a platform driving the roads looking for bear scent. Now they can get up and look at a computer or a phone and see exactly, what happened at that bait site. And I know that Wi-Fi cameras in areas that have Wi-Fi, not all areas are applicable to that, especially up here in the UP where cell phone signal's spotty. But so to answer the question, yeah, I mean, if he wants to put a camera up to watch the area and it's not controlling a weapon and it's not, giving him an unfair advantage or ethical, advantage over the traditional way the laws are written, then that would be legal to do. And I hope that, these people that want to use that technology are successful, because at the end of the day, we want people to kill deer. We want people to be out there hunting, and we're slowly evolving the way we do things from the primitive way to the technology way. So hopefully that answers his question.
Lieutenant, it does. It answers it very well. And as always, I appreciate your time. Lieutenant Jason Wicklund of the DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR, who has helped us out so many times. And Don Schlegel, thank you so much for posing the question for this week's Ask Avery segment. And thank you to our friends at Security Credit Union for making the Ask Avery segment possible. If you want to ask me a question, or if you want to see if I can get to the bottom of get you an answer by reaching out to somebody else, send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we'll talk a little trapping with Berne Burzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Yes, indeed. This is the big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. And so glad to have you along with us as we jump into the month of November. Yes, Rocktober is in the rearview mirror now, and we are in the month of November. It's a great time of year. A great time of year here in the outdoors in the great state of Michigan. But, as I say that, I'm thinking, boy, there are very few months that aren't great times of year in the outdoors here in the great state of Michigan. Now, there are months when things slow down, right? But there's something every season here in our state. Right now, of course, deer hunters are excited because the firearm season just around the corner. And right now, the whitetail rut. But there's a lot of other things going on as well. When I look at the different outdoor activities here, I think, it takes a certain amount of skill to be involved in most of them. Hunting, for example. If you are, say, a firearm deer hunter, you need to get that deer within, 100 yards, maybe 200 yards if you're a good shot. If you're a bow hunter, like Tom Nelson was talking, he doesn't want to shoot a deer beyond 30 yards. Okay, so you got to get a deer within 30 yards to be successful. What about trappers? If you're a trapper, you have to somehow convince a critter to walk through or step into a 2 by 2 inch circle? That takes a lot of skill. I have always thought that trappers are the most knowledgeable outdoors men and women that we have here in our state. And I have much respect. Our state was explored in the early days by trappers. Trapping is still practiced today. Maybe not at the level it was generations ago, but I'm glad that it's still out there. And I'm glad there are groups like the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. And I'm glad there are guys like Ken Burzynski out there to talk with us about it and remind us that it's out there. Bernie, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, but I'm always a little bit jealous because, as I've told you before, my dad was a trapper, and I remember looking at his gangs of traps and the way he would prep those traps and head out on the trap line. I looked at that in awe. I was just a little bit too young to go with him, and it's not something that I have pursued myself, Bernie. So I look at you folks with the utmost respect. Bernie, you still there?
Yeah, I'm kind of breaking up a little bit, Mike. I can still hear you.
I'm sorry about that. I said I look at you guys with a great deal of respect because of what you're able to accomplish.
I appreciate that.
So tell me about trapping in Michigan today. Is it still something people get involved in, or is this just something you guys are trying to keep going as much for nostalgia as anything?
Well, Mike, I think it's twofold. I think one is nostalgia. There's a lot of guys out there that have trapping in their blood and will always be. And, maybe like your dad, it was kind of, it was passed down, and then we also have a bunch of new people that are now starting to trap. And there's also a lot of women right now that are really starting to get into trapping, maybe because their boyfriends or husbands or, dads or moms are doing it. So, we do have that. And also, it is a way to, and I will say this is a way to manage wildlife. It's the best thing you can do for it is to manage it. So trapping, here and there, gas prices are up, fur market's down, but you know what? Most of the guys that I talk to are still going to be out there trapping. It's just part of it. They might not hit it as hard as they have in the past, but it is a way to help wildlife. I've noticed it a lot around by my house and in other places in Michigan too.
Well, you can make a few bucks at it, but it's not something people do for the most part to supplement their income anymore, is it? Or is it, Bernie?
Well, some people are. We have a lot of big knowledgeable trappers here in Michigan, and I'm not going to drop names. But there's a lot of guys here that come out of Michigan that are big trappers. There's several of them that are making somewhat of a living off of it. They're traveling not just in Michigan but to other states. And it's kind of what the market predicts, so to speak. But, also, too, there's a lot of nuisance trapping that goes on, too. Controlling the beaver populations that we have. Sometimes they can blossom and bloom, and they can ruin a lot of property. Same with muskrat. Coyotes with your deer population. And it goes. But, you got to take a look at the industries here in Michigan. There are a couple, some of the biggest trap dealers are right here in Michigan. So, they're catering to the sportsmen. We're trying to see and help as many people as we can. I'm finding that a lot of youth right now is really, really getting interested in the trapping. And that is very, I want to say, kind of heartwarming to me. And to see these guys go out there, for the first time or, get on that trap line and they come back with that experience. It's amazing. It's amazing to see that in the young people and also in the women too. Now are starting to really come around to it.
Oh, that is very cool, and I'm so glad to hear that. If somebody was to get started in trapping, where do you start somebody? You don't start out with fox or coyote or something like that, I suspect.
You could. But there, like I've talked before, there's a giant learning curve in there. Start with something like muskrats, possibly raccoons. The best thing a young trapper can do at this point in time is to get with somebody that's trapping now, learn from them. We do have a couple of conventions across Michigan. And so, if you were to come to one of our conventions or whatever it is, you get to meet all the aspects of it, of trapping in Michigan, and even trapping outside of the state. Baits and lures and traps and, how to set traps and everything. And that just kind of cuts the learning curve way down versus when I first started trapping. It was a learn and hard knocks thing where now we can kind of level that trapping plane off a little bit and get you started in the right direction. But canines, that can be a little bit tough. Again, that is a learning curve, but it's doable. It is doable. I know a lot of young guys right now, they're starting to really pick up on coyotes. It's a bug. That's all I can say. And it works very well.
Well, one thing I've learned about you guys, and again, I have much respect for, is the fact that you welcome new people into your group. You want the sport to grow, and you want to get new people in, and you're more than willing to share your expertise and your experience with these beginning trappers.
Yes. I wish we could have across Michigan more of a youth involvement. And we're working on that. We're trying to get some guys here in Michigan that are, we do have several people that are trapping instructors. We're looking to also get a few more guys in there that are have trapping instructions, and they can help you get certified and teach classes and maybe possibly go to some of the schools. I know farther up in Michigan, there's a few folks up in there that do that. We'll go to the schools and just introduce trapping, as hunting, as part of it, of the culture, of Michigan. It is. Some people look at it as, a cool thing to do. But again, as I say, the best way you can deal with wildlife is to manage it. So yeah, getting kids involved in it, it gets them outdoors, gets them to put their phones down, gets them away from the TV. And, I guess I'd rather have my kid running around in the woods than on the street. I guess that's my best thing I could say.
Oh, that's for sure. We're talking with Berne Burzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. Their website is mtpca.com. MTPCA, Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association, mtpca.com. Got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, I want to talk more with Berne about trapping in today's world, some of the misconceptions. These guys have been, they've had a target on their back for the last few years from the antis. And as with I was going to say most of what the antis do. No, with all of what the antis do, it's based on misinformation and lies. So I want to talk about the reality of trapping. Is it humane? Why is it such a great way to control predator populations? And how you would get started. Again, the website, mtpca.com, mtpca.com. We'll take a break. More with Bernie Burzynski right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee on WTIQ 1490 AM and 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard as they have for me. In fact, right now as I'm in the studio, the guys from Reader are over shutting down the sprinkler system. And they were there just a couple of days ago doing some fall cleanup. It's nice to have the folks from Reader kind of helping things out. They can either take over and do all of your maintenance and your improvements and your backyard getaway, or like me, I like to do some of it myself and let the Reader guys do the rest of it, because every hour they're at my house, it's one more hour I can spend hunting or fishing. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. Right now we're talking trapping. Trapping in Michigan in the modern world with Bernie Burzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. Their website, mtpca.com, mtpca.com. Bernie, how many years have you been trapping?
Oh, gosh, Mike, I don't know. Started right around 1973, somewhere around in there. So I've been at it for a while.
You got a little experience under your belt there, Bernie.
Yeah, just a little, but not a lot. I'm learning every day, Mike.
Still, seriously, even now?
Oh, yes. To this day and age, people are always coming up with a new idea or, something that's not thought of. That's what it is. No two trappers trap the same, and no two traps are set the same. So, there's a little twist here and there, and and that's kind of what we're trying to show the youth. Hard knocks back then when I first started, but now we're trying to, like I said, flatten the curve off, get those young guys out there, get them trapping straight out of the truck. Yeah.
Well, Bernie, your group has certainly received more than your share of undue negative criticism. Let's talk about traps in particular right now for a couple of minutes. Traps have been called inhumane, that they're killers and all this stuff. But the more I learn about the traps you folks are using these days, that's just blatantly not true, is it?
This is not true, Mike. We're developing traps every day. Before a trap really comes out on the market, it's tested. Not only by the trapper that maybe designed it, but also by people out there looking to make that humane catch with an animal. The falsity is a lot of these people are bringing out are, things 20, 30 some years ago, some of the old pictures and photos and stuff like that. And it's like, we've totally got away from that. The biggest thing, and we promote that as trappers. If you're going to restrict an animal, make it as comfortable as you can, till you get there. Is it cruel? I will say, for a couple minutes. And I've got to say that in minutes. Look at all the animals that have been hit on the side of the road. The ones you see, what about the ones in the ditches that you do not see? I would rather go in there and, manage some of those animals, put the fur to good use, and some of the meat to good use. So trappers are always looking to develop and, make a different way, yes, to make, greater amounts of catches but also make humane catches at the time too. So we're always looking to that. And I don't think in this day and age there's any really unhumane trappers. There might be, but most trappers look down upon those guys pretty heavy. So
you guys are a pretty good self-regulated group, aren't you?
we try to be. I can't say we can. I can't say that we can do that with every individual. But some individuals have learned a certain way to do it, and if we find out possibly the way that they're doing it, maybe to critique them a little bit and say, hey, look, do it this way. It's a lot better. The eyes of, the eyes of the antis are on us. I mean, they're constantly looking at us. I can't say I'd like to work with them because they just have a mindset that they just, they're not understanding what we're doing out there.
No. Bernie, is it true that there are a couple of basic kinds of traps? One being a trap that would keep the animal in place until the trapper can get there to either take care of the animal or release it, and the other one would be like you'd use for a water animal, like a beaver or something, designed to drown them and take them out right away. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. You're talking leg hold traps, and then you're also talking body gripping traps. Mm-hmm. Body gripping traps can be used on land, but only a certain size. Some of the big ones that you would use from underwater, for underwater beaver trapping, are outlawed on land. They have to be submerged underwater. And that makes a quick dispatch, whether you catch an otter, a beaver, a muskrat. That makes a real fast dispatch. And then there's, a leg hold trap. And there's so many varieties out there and so many different ones to use, depending on the species of animal you get or you're trying to target. And so then there's also a trap that's, in the medium in there too. So, you have a trap that, let's say you can take coyotes with, but also that trap also is good for raccoons. And then on the other side of that too, there's live traps. Some guys are using live traps up around the barns. There's traps out there called dog-proof traps, which I can't say is totally accurate because you might catch a dog. I'm not saying that you won't. I will never ever say that you will not, but chances are you're not going to. So, and that also is a good humane trap where if you catch an animal that you want to release, you can unharmed. And I have done that, with many animals, released unharmed. So,
what about snares? Are snares legal?
Let's redefine that a little bit.
Okay.
There are snares, and then there's cable restraints. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A snare is designed to hold an animal and possibly kill it. And then there's cable restraints, which we have in Michigan that we are allowed to use on land. And there's many features in that snare. There's a deer stop, so it will not restrict far down to, how you want to say, strangle an animal out. Then we also have a release, which is like an S-hook called a breakaway. So if let's just say a deer does get caught in one of your cable restraints, generally he can power out and break that thing and that little breakaway, and he's gone. And then there's several swivels on there, and the swivels are designed to keep the animal there and comfortable until you come to dispatch, or possibly even release. I'm not saying that. You could possibly release.
What's the hardest critter to trap in Michigan, in your opinion?
Oh, well, there's a wise one, and then there's, that is a kind of a toss-up. And I would say the very last beaver of a colony. If you have a beaver that is causing, or beavers that are causing problems and flooding, you can usually take out the young and work your way all the way up until you get to the last one. Beavers can smell, beavers can hear, beavers can tell what kind of truck you drive, believe it or not. I'm a firm believer in that. And I believe they're probably one of the hardest ones to catch. And then you can bring it on down the line. Coyotes are kind of wise. They're not impossible, but they can wreak havoc with you. They can make you scratch your head every day. But I would probably have to say a beaver. That very last beaver is probably the toughest one to get.
Well, and you talk about beavers. I think that's a great example of what you folks as trappers do to control populations, because that's very visible. You can see when you got a bunch of beavers that come in and flood an area, okay, we need to do something about this, and trapping is I think, in my opinion, the best way to take care of it.
Yes. A lot of our trappers are working with in the counties with the drain commissions. If they start seeing a beaver issue, they try to get a hold of a trapper or even us. You can call us. We've got kind of I can't say a hotline, but get a hold of us. And if it's in season, we'll try to get somebody over there to get on the beaver situation. Or even if it's after season, we'll try to get somebody over there. But you got to think about it. Here's one guy trapping beaver, and he's in there. He's possibly during the season, he's trapping beaver out. He's having fun. And that is his sport. Versus if he plugs up that culvert and they have to call the road commission in, that could be 3 trucks of backhoe and how many man hours redoing that whole culvert. Call the guy. I can't say we'll make every beaver call out there, but beavers can make some damage, a lot. Same with muskrats too, and some of your farm ditches and lanes. Not so much the flooding as the beavers can do, but they can be an issue.
Bernie, I tell you, I feel like you and I could talk about trapping for the entire 3-hour show, but we're kind of out of time for this week's show. What I would like to do is maybe get you on in the future too and talk more about this, because we didn't even talk about behind the scenes, what's involved in processing furs and what's involved in a fur sale and all that stuff. And again, I think it's such a fascinating topic. I'd like to get you back on.
Mike, I'd love to. Get back with me and let's work something out.
All right, let's make it happen. Bernie Burzynski of the Michigan Trappers and Predator Callers Association. Bernie was talking about giving him a call. You can find a number and you can find contact info to get in touch with this Michigan trapping group online at mtpca.com. That's mtpca.com. Trappers are they're a fascinating group because in my mind, it's such hard work. You put a trap line out there, you can't just walk away from it. Legally and morally, you have a responsibility to check that line, depending on where you live in the state, every given number of hours or given number of days. So it's a lot of work, and it's not easy, but man, do these folks fill a very important role. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. Lots more coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan. A few of those include News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN in Ludington. Just up the road in Manistee, WMLQ 97.7. And let's jump over to the other side of the state, to Saginaw. In Saginaw, WSGW 790 AM and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now for these 3 hours, this one small corner of the building I have dubbed the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. Now, there's nothing official that says that, although I do have a logo behind me that kind of makes it look like it. I'm here with Charlie Rood. Charlie doing a wonderful job as always. And because this fall weather has been so nice, the crowd, Charlie, look out there. The crowds out here are just... Charlie. And they just love Charlie. You can hear Charlie on WSGW. What, the morning team, Charlie? Morning team. on WSGW AM and FM. Thank you, Charlie. You do a wonderful job. You and Pat helped me out so much. I couldn't do it without you guys. Also couldn't do the show without the help from some of my advertising partners, including the folks at Brenton USA. Brenton USA hunting rifles, AR style, highly accurate, tough, dependable rifles that could change the way you hunt. Certainly change the way you look at AR style rifles. And AR doesn't stand for assault rifle. I don't care what the dingbats in the regular media say. It's not assault rifle. It stands for Armalite. They're great hunting rifles. They're made in Lansing, accurate, dependable, and they come with a lifetime guarantee. You can see them at Jay's Sporting Goods, and you can also order them online if you want at BrentonUSA.com. If you do, use the promo code Avery, and you can save $100. BrentonUSA.com, use the promo code Avery, and save $100. How cool is that? How cool is it also that we are now into the month of November? Rocktober's behind us, Halloween is behind us, and the end of the year is going to come rushing at us like a freight train now. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. So sit back, take a big, deep breath, make it a point to get outdoors as much as possible. Get out on the water, enjoy some great fall fishing. Head out into the whitetail woods. The rut is on. Now the rut is on. What is the rut? The rut is it's the whitetail breeding season. It's a time when some of those bigger bucks just might let their guard down a little bit, and maybe other than running completely nocturnal, you might get a chance to see one in the daytime. Congrats to my granddaughter, Addison. She shot a real nice buck, 2.5-year-old 7-point the other night with a crossbow. I was very proud of her, although I am giving her some grief because I'm her grandpa and I can do this. Because she said, we saw this buck on trail camera about 3 weeks ago. And she said at the time, she said, Grandpa, I'm going to shoot that buck. And she did. So I'm giving her grief. I say, Addison, you shot your grandpa's buck. Oh, no, Grandpa, that was my buck. I said, Addison, I'm an old man. I don't have that many more years that I can hunt. You have your entire lifetime ahead of you, and you shot your grandpa's buck. Now, she knows I'm just kidding her, and I give her a big hug, but we have some good fun with that. And isn't that part of what this whole outdoor lifestyle of hunting and fishing is all about? This family interaction, this tradition that continues, right? In my own family, my grandpa was a hunter and fisherman. He taught my dad how to hunt and fish, who taught me how to hunt and fish. I'd like to think I had some role in teaching my son James how to hunt and fish, although he has, and I'm very honest about this, he has surpassed my ability manyfold. He's a much better hunter and angler than I am, and I think that's great. And then James has taught his kids how to hunt and fish. So, okay, my grandpa, my dad, me, my son, my grandkid. There's 5 generations right there of hunting and fishing, of enjoying this outdoor lifestyle, this tradition of hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. And to me, that's what this is all about. Yes, we do it for wildlife management. Yes, we do it to keep populations under control. Yes, we do it to put meat on the table and in the freezer. And those are all valid, viable, necessary reasons. But it's more. It goes beyond that. It's keeping this history and tradition of who we are in Michigan, who we are as Michiganders, and who we are in our own families. It's keeping this going. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. So, we're in November. Oh, also, hey, we're kicking off the Ham for the Holidays program with our friends from Michigan Brand Meats. How do you do that? You tune in on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock on my social media outlets. This is a recent tradition. I think we've been doing it for 5 years or so now. It's called Wednesday Night Live. And starting now through the first of the year, in partnership with Michigan Brand Meats, we do Ham for the Holidays. Every week we give away a Michigan brand ham from now through the first of the year. And if you have not had a Michigan brand ham, you are missing out on something. So tune in to Wednesday Night Live on my social media outlets starting right now. Starting right now. This week you can tune in, and that's every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. You can win a Michigan brand ham for the holidays. My email address is mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. That's how you can reach me with questions for the Ask Avery segment. It's how you can suggest story topics for the show. It's how you can ask me questions, criticisms, comments. That's fine. I want to hear from you. Mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's Mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. We'll take a break here. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this week's show as we do each week with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. That's coming up. And I think he said he's got another, a venison recipe coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery, and I do certainly appreciate you being along with us this week. There are a lot of things you could be watching or listening to, or things taking up your time, and the fact that you can hear my voice means so much to me. It also means a lot to me to be able to wrap up each week's show with my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. Dave and I have been working together for a long, long time. We were both young men when we started, and now we're not. But we're both still here, and Dave is with us once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
Pretty good. We both had dark beards. I saw old videos that your buddy there put on when we were on TV5.
Yeah, I have had a dark beard for many years now.
Me too. I was on the front cover of that Venison Well Done video.
So what do you got for us this week, Dave?
Well, Thanksgiving is coming up pretty soon, and most people like to have turkey with a cranberry dressing and gravy and mashed potatoes. But I've got a venison steak with cranberries. So you could maybe try that instead of just the turkey, or in conjunction with your turkey. So
yeah, let's hear it.
This is a recipe you could simmer for a long, long time or eat it rare. It's up to you. It's one of them recipes that let it be in the oven for an hour or two. Man, oh, man. So anyways, you need about 8 ounces of leg steak or loin steak per person, about a 12-ounce package of mushrooms sliced. And if you don't care for mushrooms, leave it out. It's up to you. 1 medium diced fine, 2 to 3 ounces of Crantasia schnapps. You can buy that anywhere. And I do believe it comes in half pints, or pints, so you don't have to buy a full fifth. A couple ounces of jellied cranberry sauce. I would like to use the straight one without any diced up berries in it. Just use the clear. 1 jar of beef gravy, and this would be for 4 portions. 1 to 2 tablespoons of garlic butter. And if you're not going to use garlic butter, at the end I want you to put a couple of pats of fresh butter in it, or you could use 2 to 3 cloves of garlic depending on your taste. A couple of 2 to 3 ounces of heavy cream. And if you like fresh black pepper ground in, by all means use it. And if you don't care for it, just use a dash of white pepper to your taste. Flour to dredge, olive oil to saute. So what I would say is make sure you get the steaks. You cut them across the grain. That's first thing. And you're going to grind black pepper on it if you so desire. And then you're going to place between 2 sheets of plastic wrap, whether it be a bread bag or something like that. Make sure if it has any kind of labeling or painting, you put it on the outside so you're not going to pound that into the meat. So you're going to pound it with a meat mallet to tenderize and flatten it out. I would have to say less than a half-inch thick, because it still will draw up a little bit. In a very hot saute pan with a small amount of olive oil, dredge or brown the dredged steaks on both sides. Make sure you want to caramelize that. That's a lot of flavor right there if you can caramelize that. Make sure the pan is really hot. Don't be scared. So remove the steaks out right while they're nice and rare. In the same pan, add the mushrooms and onions and the garlic and saute that for just a little while. And if you're worried about flambeing, I would add the gravy at this point. But if you like the flambe, by all means, take that pan with the schnapps in it right away. Take it away from the stove hood, and then use a barbecue lighter and light it up, let it burn down. And then you can add the cranberry sauce. And if you didn't have the gravy in it, use that. And then white pepper, if you're prone to using that. Cook that down fast over high heat. And then if you use regular raw garlic, I would have put that in with the other veggies. But what you want to do is reduce that steak down, like I said, by about half volume, and then add the heavy cream. See how that looks thickness-wise. You might have to cook it down a little bit more. Add the meat back to it. Rare to medium rare is the very best way. But if you want something like, say, it's almost going to be like a cranberry Swiss steak, put it covered in the oven for at least an hour, maybe an hour and 10 or 15 minutes. And when it's done, take the steaks out to the plates, whether it's oven well done or medium to rare. Spoon the sauce over it after the heavy cream goes in it. Cook it down. Make sure that it's thick and creamy, because you got a couple minutes. You know, it depends on what your idea of thick and creamy is. Spoon some of the sauce over each, and enjoy right along with your turkey with cranberry.
Well, as always, Dave, you come up with another great recipe. I don't remember seeing this one on the old TV show. Did you do this one?
Yep. I found so many recipes that we did on the show that really actually didn't make it to the cookbook. Some of them did. And I was going through some papers for my mother. She had deceased a year or so. And I come across a whole bunch of handwritten stuff. So I could pull a whole bunch out of my hat.
Well, and listen, next week, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but next week we might have some interesting news from Chef Dixie Dave Miner.
Yeah, it is interesting now that you mention it.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I'll look forward to talking with you next week about possibly that interesting news.
Okay. I'll keep it in my mind about interesting. Thanks, Mike. I'll have a great week.
All right, you as well. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you, because I've said so many times, if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show, and I would be very, very sad. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't forget about our Wednesday Night Live and our Ham for the Holidays with Michigan brand meats. That's going on through the first of the year. I hope you get a chance to get out on the water, get out in the woods, maybe take advantage of the whitetail rut or more, depending on what it is you love here in the outdoors. My name is Mike Avery, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.